Check, check, check 1, 2. YouTube video, check. YouTube audio, check. Discord audio looks good. Discord text looks good. Okay, good morning. It is Friday, December 1st, 2023. It's been a while. We have not had a coding stream in a while. We are in a new digital home, so I want to take a second to thank Alan and also Dark Noise for um, very warmly inviting me to host these coding streams going forward here in the Sierra Charts community Discord channel. I'll post a link in the description for those of you who are looking to join a community of coders and problem solvers who are looking to work on Sierra chart and trading problems in general. That being said, Ziggy already has a question prepared for us, so thank you, Ziggy. Let me get this copied and pasted over here, and then we'll go through this. C++. His suggestion example is to write subgraphs like this. Okay, let me reread that because I'll be honest, I'm only one cup of coffee in and I did not understand. So how can we use ACSIL to get the valley information from a volume peak valley study? So I've never used that, so we'll have to open that to look. Stored as subgraphs. Well, I guess Ziggy, first question is, in this study that you're using, volume peak valley, is the valley data already stored in a subgraph? And if you have a mic, feel free to jump on. The study is volume by price, but it contains data for valleys and peaks. So the study is volume by price. Okay. Let's make that a little bit larger. But it contains data for peaks and valleys. Is that data that it contains, do you know if it's adjustable in the, well, let's just open a volume by price. I think I even have one right here. Here's a volume by price right here. Let's volume by price and then subgraphs. And then is the peak and valley information in here or no? Oh yeah, volume peaks. So this subgraph 18 and 19, that's what you're looking for, Ziggy? But when enabled, it just draws out the lines. When enabled, it just draws out the lines. You can't derive prices from enabling that. I see. Have you looked into the data structures associated with the volume by price study? Have you looked into the data structures inside of it to see if you can derive it from there? Interesting. Okay. Okay. Well, let's play with it. This 18 and 19. One thing, the volume by price study for Sierra is something I think that it's one of the 2 or 3 things in Sierra chart that they kind of hold close to their chest in the sense that they don't typically share how the underlying works, but along with I think number bars and like the VAP container, but they actually ended up opening up the VAP container so we can play with it. Um, so I wonder if this kind of information is already exposed, if it's calculated already or not. Um, so you're looking to get the actual price of each peak and valley. So what happens if you know what, let me make so I don't mess up my chart book here. Let me save this, and then let me make uh, a change to here. Do I need to enable something in the settings to enable peak and valley? Like where is it? I've never used them before. Extends peaks and valleys to end of period. Draw peaks, draw peaks. Draw peaks and valleys. Got it. I see it. Both peaks and valleys. Okay, let's hit OK. And so there they are as lines. And they appear to be at specific prices, right? So that must be getting derived somewhere. And then if we go into the subgraph values and we look at peaks and valleys, it looks like it's being drawn as a solid line. You wanted it to be price, right? You wanted to be able to derive the price, not the actual line. Okay. Well, I think what we'll need to do is spin up a small code example. Oh, hold on. Alan just chimed in here with something that might be of relevance. Let me grab that. Alan's stating that you can access them potentially using the get study peak valley line. I wonder what that actually does. Let's go ahead and open up the documentation for the functions. And it's called get study peak valley line. Let's take a look and read through this. So it's used to obtain the details about a peak or valley line from a study if that study supports peak and valley lines. The studies that support it are the TPO and the volume by price, so this would apply. It cannot be obtained for volume by price studies which uses visible bars for the period type, which is interesting. So it has to have some other sort of like terminated or explicitly set uh, value for this input on the volume by price. But it looks like, so what does it take? It takes the chart number, it takes the study ID, and then you pass in an array, or rather a reference to a float that will be populated, I'm guessing, and then some other variables that will also be populated. Oh, it says them right here. Okay, so this is a parameter that's a reference on the return. This will be a line that has been found according to the profile index. So it looks like this can do, like Alan was saying, this can grab those peaks and valleys from there. Have you tried playing with this at all, Ziggy? Okay, let's um let's approach this a little bit differently. Uh, I'm gonna close my chart book, and I'm gonna spin up a new chart book here. Uh, what window am I stuck on? Open window. Why can't I touch this window? We had some kind of connection issue. Are you guys still able to hear me? No. You can still hear me? Okay. Take a look here. Yeah, yeah. And I got disconnected from actually got disconnected from Lightspeed as well. Let me shut down Lightspeed. And Sierra's just won't let me do anything right now, and I'm not sure why. I was gonna try to open up a messages. Yeah, messages. Close. Yeah, I can't do anything. It's just completely locked up. Let me shut down Sierra, or try to. Control bar. Why is this? Yeah, it just won't let me do anything. I gotta shut it all down. Well, it's a great start. Let's go ahead and grab this. Task Manager, Sierra chart. Not sure why this is. You can hear it in the background. It's just completely frozen up. Sierra chart, Sierra chart. The fun of live streams. End task. There it goes. Let's try this again. Log in. Let me move this up here. And let's open up a new chart book. We're going to just make find symbol. We can open a new intraday or historical chart. We could use ES, for example, and then let's go ahead and slap on a volume by price, add, and then we want to have draw. Where was that draw? Peaks and valleys, where are you? Draw, peaks and valleys. None, we'll want to draw both. And then I want to make sure that my peaks and valleys are different colors. So peaks, I'm going to make white, and then valleys, I'm going to make whatever that color is. Let's see what that gives us. And maybe I need to do something else because multiple profiles. I just want one profile, and let's do it based on number of bars. And where is number of bars? One profile based on number of bars. Based on bar count. Bar count. What does that give me right there? Let's make it right aligned so it's a little bit easier to see, which for some reason has two settings, but that's okay. And there's our peak. There's another peak. They're in white. And then here's our valley, another valley, another valley, another valley. Okay. Now I have to reopen everything that we just closed. So there's get study peak valley line. Let's go ahead and open up Vim and get to coding. So gvim, and I'm going to put this up here on this side, and we can put Sierra chart over here. And I want to find colon Sierra chart, ACS source, and then I'm sure there's another coding stream example. That's from May. Yeah, we can use that. Here's one from August, just to have something to start as a template. And we'll say this is December 1st, 2023. And this will be a peak valley example. And we don't need this. This is peak valley. And we don't have any inputs yet. So first thing we need to do is actually get a handle on this volume by price study. So one way we can do that is by throwing an input in here, which is going to be an SC input reference. And let's call it our peak valley study. Oh, you know, if the video is low res, I wonder, stream quality, 30 frames per second, does that help at all? Maybe that helps a little bit. Otherwise, I need to look into making some changes here in the infrastructure. Okay, so the way to get a handle on the input, let's just say it's input 0. The first input, that's going to be our iPeak Valley study. And then here we're going to want to say iPeak Valley study dot name is select peak valley study. And then for the selector, and I always forget this, I always have to look it up. So pardon me as I look this up because I can never remember. We want the input arrays, and it's like get subgraph, get study subgraph something, get set chart study subgraph values. I think this is the one we want because we provide a chart number, the study ID, and then the subgraph index of that peak and valley. Although maybe we don't want to do specific subgraph because these two are on two different subgraphs. So maybe what we want is not the get chart study subgraph values, but just get the set chart study value, because we want to be able to access two different subgraphs. So get chart study is what we want. I think it's this one, set chart study values, like this. Set chart study values with the chart number and the study ID. That's the one we're going to use. So let's do that, set chart study values, and then we're going to just use the chart number that this study is going to be run on, and then we'll default it to 0, and then we'll select it in the input. So that'll provide us that. And then we want to look at two different subgraphs, right? We want to look at, the first one is the peak subgraph, and then the next one is the valley subgraph. So let's go ahead and look inside volume by price. And when I say peak valley, this should be a volume by price study. And let's look at the subgraph list. So where is peak and valley? There's peak, there's valley. So this is subgraph 18. Peak is subgraph 18. And this is subgraph 19. I'm just making notes for myself for later when we need to code up grabbing the values at these. So SG18 and SG19. The other thing I can never remember is one of these is 0 indexed and the other one is 1 indexed. Like, I don't remember if it's the inputs that are 0 indexed and the subgraphs are 1 indexed, meaning that the inputs start at index 0 or 1, or the subgraph start at 0, 1. So we'll have to remember that. I always forget and I have to look it up at the time of writing. So let's go ahead and grab values for both of these subgraphs. Well, how do we do that? Let's go back to the documentation because I definitely don't remember that. Let's go back up to the top. And what we're actually wanting to get is information from the subgraph. So how do we get values from a subgraph? It's somewhere in here. Gosh, take a couple weeks off and feel like super rusty just coding. It's not in here. It must be under the functions. Let's go to functions. Study subgraph. Get chart study input. Get chart study input chart study subgraph values. I don't know if that's the one we want. Get chart study line with name from chart. Which other ones do we have here? Sets chart study stuff. No, it must have been that first one. Is this the one? This gets the study input value as a subgraph value structure for the specified chart number and study ID. So I think this is what we actually want. Get chart study input chart study values, because this should populate the values of that subgraph into the array that we're going to be passing in, or the structure, I should say, that we're going to be passing in. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's move this down here and take this off, and then we can, how about we just set this right there. So how do we use this function? Well, it's there's a code example right here. First, you need to build this type of structure. It's an schart study subgraph values structure. Schart study subgraph values structure. And what should we call our first one? Well, the first one is going to be for peaks. So the second one we need is going to be for valleys. So what if we just called it peak values, and then we make a second one called valley values. And one thing that I want to do is actually go look at how this structure is defined. I'm going to go ahead and split my my Vim window here, and I'm going to look for, that is not what I was looking for. ACS source, let's do that. I want SC structures, I think, is the one I want. And I want to find the definition for this structure. So Sierra chart exposes this to us. I just wanted to, out of curiosity's sake, see what is actually under the hood for this structure? Well, we can see it here inside the SC structures file, which all of you will have in your Sierra chart ACS source, um, in your ACS source directory. Like you can see it here, C:/Sierra chart ACS source SC structures.h. And all I did was search for the structure name, which is this, and then you can see it has three members to it. One is the chart number, second one's the study ID, and here's the subgraph index. So that is not actually going to give us what we wanted because we needed to grab the values back from it. This must be grabbing something to do with actual input, so that's not grabbing the actual values for that subgraph. Yeah, I think this is the wrong function. I think I chose the wrong function. Let's go back to the docs. Sorry guys, this is the rust coming off. Um, Maybe it is back in the input section. Let's go back here. Get chart study subgraph values. Yeah, it's this. This is probably what we want. This is getting actual value array. Does it? Chart number, study ID, subgraph, and then study reference gets you the study reference here as an array of floats. But is this for the specific subgraph? It is. So it's this one that we want to use. It's this one we want to use, not the other one. My bad. So let's get rid of this. We can close this. And let's go ahead and start with this. So looking at this example, we can see that the first thing that we need to define is a float array for both the subgraphs that we want to pull out. So let's start with the peak one. So SC float array peak ref, and then let's just copy that and make valley ref. And then let's go ahead and do a version of this get study array from chart using ID. You can use this one as well, but this is more explicit, and so that's why I want to use this example. I think it's just a little bit easier to see. So let's type it out manually just so that we can see what we're doing. So we're going to make a call sc get study array from chart using ID, and then the chart number we want to supply is the current chart number that this is running on, so sc.chart number. The second thing we want to supply is the study ID, which is going to have been chosen using the inputs on the actual study. So we're going to go ahead and use our input I peak valley study dot get study ID, which will return the ID of that study to right there. And then for the subgraph index, we know that we need 18 for peaks and we need 19 for valleys, and how we got there was just by looking at this list. There's 18 and there's 19, so that's how I got those. So I'm going to put 18 here for peaks, and then we'll put 19 for valleys. And then the final thing that we pass in is that reference array that is going to be populated by this function with the values from that subgraph number 18 on this study on this chart. So we're going to pass in peak ref. And then what this will do is load values of subgraph into array. And then we're going to do the same thing for valleys. This one's for peaks. And so on this one, we want the same study ID. We want a different subgraph ID, and then here we want valley ref. Okay? So now we have this and this. Now, what I like to do is do a sanity check before we even go further. And what I want to do is see, did these get populated, and what information do we have actually in the last element of both of these. So one way to do that is let's create a logging object or something to spit to the debug log, and I'll just call it a message. and it's an SC string object. And let's go ahead and format it. And let's say our whatever index that we're processing, and then we'll say peak value, and these are going to be floats because these are float array that we're using as data types. So we're going to be outputting to our log a float, which is why I have percent %.2f, which basically is saying this is a float, but I don't want to show all of the decimals. I only want to show 2 of the decimals after the decimal sign. And then valley equals %.2f. And then what I'll do is I want sc.index to pop into this spot here, and then I want this value, peak ref of sc.index to populate into here. And then what I want is valley ref of sc.index to populate into here. And that's how you do that with the format function. Next thing we need to do is add message to log, and that's it. So let's go ahead and compile this. I'm going to go analysis, I'm going to close this subgraph, analysis, build custom study. Let's go file, select files, coding stream. Did I save this as August? I did. Whoops. Well, whatever. It's saved as August, but that's okay. And actually, no. Let's be correct. Let me save this as coding stream 2023-1201.cpp. There. Now we have it as its own file, and it's right there, and we can build it. So using the remote compiler here to build this DLL, it looks like it succeeded. So now we can go ahead and add this custom study to the chart. Let's go ahead and close this. I will go to analysis studies. There's add custom study down here, and it's going to be called something like coding stream December 1, 2023. Just a little housekeeping needed here. December 1, 2023 peak valley example. Okay, so here's our inputs. So for those of you who are newer to coding ACSIL studies, there's other videos on the coding playlists on my channel that show you how to set up these inputs. But basically, the text we're seeing here is the text we're seeing here, and then this is showing up as 2 dropdowns because of the nature of the function that we're calling here, which is setting this input to be requesting of the user of these 2 settings. So we can see what chart we're on, that, and then I want to select the ID 1. I'm actually going to update this here to show ID 1 so that next time we compile this, it's already pre-selected. So that's that. So when we hit OK, this should be running through and just grabbing the most recent or whatever index we're processing and spitting out the values. Again, we are looking at these 2 subgraphs that are down here, 18 and 19. We don't know yet if I made a mistake on the 0 index, so this might be 17 and 18 rather than 18 and 19, but we'll find out in a second. So let's hit OK. And then what I want to do, oh, you see how it's down here on this? Gosh, there's a setting for that. It's sc dot subgraph. I forgot which one it is. There's another. There's a piece of code you can use to move this up to here, but I don't think it really matters. Chart region. That's it. Chart region equals 1. Let's go ahead to Window, Message Log, or you can hit Control M, and let's pick it up. So we're on the most recent. Bar, which is bar 629, and we're getting zeros for both peaks and valleys. Interesting. I wonder why that would be. I wonder if it has something to do with it being an intra or a daily chart rather than intraday. Let's do this. Chart studies, and then there's a thing called bar numbering, which just helps you see display numbers, text labels, tick offset, number every 1 bars, and Do not reset at start of day. Yeah, I just want it to run. Oh, it is resetting it. Okay, I need to set that to yes. That's like a triple negative. Do not reset at start of day. Yes. Yes, I do not want you to reset at start of day. Okay. So this is bar, and for some reason these bars start at 1, not 0. So bar 630 is actually bar 629 on the message log, which is fun. So bar 63, this is very large. Bar 630 is actually bar 629 in the code. But you can see that we have nothing. We have nothing here. And I don't know why. Let's try to figure it out. But it is spitting out, it is running through it, but just is not finding anything. And I wonder even if these were um, 0 or 1 indexed, like even if I switch this to 17 and 18, I have a feeling that I'm not going to get any information here, and I wonder if that's because Sierra chart is not actually exposing that to us. So what was the name of the function that Alan showed us the other moment ago? Get study peak valley line. Let's take a look at how to implement this, since directly accessing the subgraphs does not appear to work. Let's add a note. Does not appear to work. Glad we did the sanity check, right? Expected result was see last bar's peak and valley values, and actual result is zeros, right? And I don't think that even if we, let me put the message log back up. Where did it go? I think even if we were to do something like restart, I'm hitting refresh here. Yeah, you see even on the 0, let me scroll up here, even when I recalculate and it's at the very beginning, it's on the 0 index, it's not getting any values from there. So it just looks like it just can't access the values from there. So, which is I kind of think is why Alan and Luda had suggested a different approach. But let's go ahead and look at the get study peak valley line. So we tried this. This doesn't work. Let's go ahead and mute this. And this also doesn't work. So let's try, and we can keep our SC logging object because we'll use that for other debug. So let's try get study peak valley line. So this function will, okay, this has quite a few different inputs. I'm just gonna copy this here and paste it in here so that we can see. The call would be something like sc get peak value line, and we want to provide a chart number. Well, what's our chart number? Well, we know our chart number is the one that the study is running on, so we can replace that with sc.chartNumber. The study ID, we already did that here, so that's going to be our volume by price, right? So let's go ahead and replace that with I peak valley study.get study ID, okay? And then I'm actually going to move these down to the next line just so that it's a little bit easier to see. Same function, just more visually easier to see. So we've got chart number, study, and then peak valley line price. Now, peak valley line price, well, how do they define it? This is a parameter as a reference on the return. This will be populated with the peak or valley line that has been found according to the profile index and peak valley index parameters, which we haven't gone across yet. I don't know yet what these mean. It will be 0 if the line was not found. So I don't know what these two mean yet, but this sounds like a parameter that we need, or a variable we need to declare before we are passing it in here. So let's go ahead and say float peak valley line price equals 0. And then here we'll pass that variable that we just declared, peak valley line price, in right here. You don't have to call it this. You could call it apples and bananas, or whatever you want to call it. I'm just calling it that so that it is easily readable. We know what it's referring to. Now, peak valley type, what is this parameter referring to? Let's go ahead to the docs. This parameter is a reference. On return, it will be populated with a type, whether this is a peak or a valley, according to these two things that we still haven't learned about yet. If it will be 0 if the line was not found. It will be set to either peak valley type none, which is a 0, peak valley type peak, which will be a 1. So peak valley type valley 2 equals 2 is a valley. So this is just an enum, or integers representing logical states that this could be returned in. Let's go ahead and do very similar with this, what we did up here. Let's declare an integer peak valley type. Let's initialize it to 0, and we're going to pass that in right there. And then here, I'm just going to add a quick note. So peak valley type none is 0. Peak valley type peak is 1. And these will be the return values. Valley is 2. So we'll have to examine this after this call rate of 622, or 621, because this is one ahead of where the code is, which is super confusing. So this one will return a 621 start index, I am guessing. So that's what start index does. So what we need to do is declare that start index variable so that we can examine it. So that's also going to be an integer start index equals 0, and then we can pass that in. And then, you know what I might do is actually just make these all individual on their own line. That way it's just easier visually. That's a little bit better visually. So we were on start index, we declared it, wasn't found. If this line extends to the end of the chart, the variable will be set to 0. That's interesting. If this line extends to the end of the chart, this variable will be set to 0. Also, if it's not found, it will be set to 0. It will also be 0 in the case where the line is not set to extend. So there's 3 different, for this one parameter, this one argument to this function, there are 3 separate things that a 0 return for this end index could potentially mean, which is kind of interesting. Let's go ahead and declare this. So this is also going to be an integer. I'm just going to call this end index rather than peak valley extension chart column end index. I'm just going to call it end index and initialize it. And I'm going to pass this in as end index just because I don't want to have to retype that long thing over and over. Okay, we're on to profile index. And I believe this is finally these 2 parameters that we kept seeing everywhere else, but we hadn't had an explanation for what they actually are yet. Here's the explanation. Profile index. With volume by price study and also the TPO profile chart study, they consist of multiple profiles. The profile index specifies the zero-based index of the profile you will be obtaining the peak or valley line from. Effective with version 1843, and I'm on 2551, it looks like. So way past this, which most of us are likely way past this version. This can be a negative number. So the profile index could be a negative number. In this case, -1 will refer to the most recent profile in the chart. That's really handy to be able to use that. That's smart that they built it that way. And I'm going to set it to -1 because I want the most recent one. I'm going to set a little comment here to explain. This is for volume by price studies, which can have multiple volume profiles. This is the index of the VP we want to examine. Negative numbers indicate, sometimes I'll do this. I'll grab the link right here, and then I'll copy, and then I'll say um, see more here. And that way, when I'm looking back at the code and trying to add a feature months or years later, I know what I was thinking and doing here. If you're not doing this, you're causing yourself pain further along. But that's end of the soapbox rant there. So profile index -1, that's the most recent one. Let's go ahead and replace this with profile index. And now we only have one left, and that's peak valley index. Let's go read the definition. Peak valley index, each profile in the study is specified in by the profile index parameter, which could contain a peak or valley line. The peak, and that this profile index is this, and we're selecting the most recent one because we're using -1. So yes, that makes sense. The peak valley index, this one, is a zero-based index of line with the profile to return. So each one, what they're saying is let me hide, let me just do this. Each one of these lines, this one, this valley, this peak, this valley, this peak, each one of these has an ID assigned to it internally, and it's a zero based. And let's see, does it start with 0 at the bottom or the top, I wonder? Start setting this to 0 and increment it until there are no longer any peaks or valley lines obtained. Then you know you've obtained them all from a particular study. Aha. So Sierra is not exposing a way for us to know the total number of lines and peaks and valleys here unless it's available somewhere else. If somebody knows, maybe you can chime in. But it's not exposing that. What it's actually telling us to do is keep iterating through one by one by one by one, and then when you can no longer find the line, that's how you know you've hit the end of the peaks and valley index count for this particular VP profile index, if that makes sense, Ziggy. So um, what that essentially means is that we're going to need to implement a loop. So let's implement a loop. There's a couple ways we could approach this for this loop. One way to loop through this is to have a variable that checks whether the line exists or the peak valley index exists, and use a while loop, and while that does exist, continue to process. And then when that no longer exists, you bomb out of the loop, and then you continue with your script. Another way would be to use a for loop and explicitly increment one by one. Start at 0. This setting starts at 0, and then increment it one by one until you get a response that that you no longer have a line, and then forcefully break out of your for loop, which some purists will probably scoff at. So there's a couple of different ways to cut this problem. We could use a while loop. We could use a for loop. Let's try to use a while loop here. Why not? So with using the while loop, one thing we may need to do is actually do an initial fetch for peak valley index. So I need to set an integer peak valley index to 0, and I'm going to create a note. Start at 0 and increment this variable until we do not get a line back from the function. So it returns effectively. And which one of these returns 0? It will be 0 if a line was not found. So something like peak valley line price or peak valley type. Maybe actually type might be a good one to use because we can explicitly look at that. So while peak valley type is 0, or while it is not 0, I should say, we can continue to process, and as soon as that returns a 0, then we need to bomb out. So let's go ahead and use this peak valley type. Right now it's set to 0, but when we make this call, it's going to get set to something other than 0, and that's going to let us go into our while loop. So on this first run, I'm going to call this first run to see if we have any other, or any at all, any VP peak valley lines at all, is to call this. Now, before we enter our while loop, we need to see if valley or peak valley type, this guy right here, we need to see if that got populated, because if that's still a 0, we know that not only do we not need to enter the loop at all, but this first run that we tried to do didn't find anything at all. So we can just go ahead and bomb out of our entire operation here, because maybe there's not even, check that peak valley type. So if peak valley type is equal to peak valley type none or 0, because this is an enum set to 0. If it's equal to 0, then no volume profiles with any peak valley info were found. Abort. Oops. Abort the whole thing. Okay? If we do have something, we could either go into this else block, or we could just skip the else block here. And if we have nothing, what we could do is say message.format no VPs or peak valley lines found, and then sc.add message to log, and then return from the entire function, because there's nothing further to process. If we found nothing, if we get to here, we found something. We found a peak in a valley line. Ziggy, I don't want to hog all the stream time. Welcome to revisit next time. I don't see any other questions posted, so I don't know. I think this is what the coding stream's about. Like, we didn't have any specific agenda. I'm good with continuing with this. We're almost there anyways, so. Okay. If we got to here, then we did find something. That doesn't mean that that doesn't necessarily mean we can jump into a loop and start looking for the next one, but it means that we at least got something. And what I'm very curious about is, what did we get? So right here, I want to stop and do a sanity check before we go into implementing our loop and all that stuff about going through all the different lines that are here. If we found something at 0, at peak valley index 0, I want to know what it is. So yeah, this is essentially a giant, we found something. And let's see what we found. So what information do we have? We have the peak valley price, which should be populated. We have the type. We have the start and end index, the profile. So let's go ahead and spit all this information out. Let's do message.format. Let's go ahead and say what index we're on. Actually, no, we don't need to know what index we're processing. Let's go ahead and just dump this out. Price is equal to this. Let's call type is equal to, that's an integer. Start index is equal to this. End index is equal to that. Profile index we know is -1 because we explicitly set it to that, so I don't need to dump that out to the log. And then the peak valley index, we will later be incrementing this in the while loop that we're going to build out in a second here. So I'm just going to go ahead and dump it out. Peak, I'm just going to call it PV index, just for short, equals an integer. So let's go ahead and set our price, which is peak valley line price. Peak valley line price. Let's go ahead and set our type, which is peak valley type. Let's go ahead and set our start index, our end index. Let me move this down so it's a little bit easier to see. And our peak valley index, sc.message, sc.add message to log. So I'm about to compile this. What is my expected behavior here? My expected behavior is that it will find one profile, which is this only profile that I have, which is set to a single volume by price. So I will not have multiple. I will not have multiple of this profile index. There's only going to be one, and it's going to be -1. I am expecting to see. I'm expecting for it to either find this bottom one or this one, top one. I'm guessing an educated guess would be the bottom one. Why? Because the other places where Sierra Chart implements this style of index incrementation, like for example the volume at price containers, they start at the bottom. So if you're iterating over a VAP container, which I do in a couple other videos, you can see how that works. We start at the bottom. So my guess is it's going to find this peak. My guess is that the price is going to be set to 43.80 or very close to it. And let's go ahead and compile this and see if that educated guess is correct. So I'm going to just do a remote build here. Okay, there we go. And then let's close this. And then let me do a refresh. And then where's my log? Control M. Okay, let's take a look at this. So there we go. It's running on every single tick. Let me make this a little bit wider. It's running on every tick coming into the ES. So price is 41.82 and 41.82. Price is 41.82. Hold on a second. Aha, there's more down here. I didn't see those. Okay, so it did start at the bottom. It's just that the bottom was off of my screen. There it is. So it does this index, peak valley index. No, not that one. Yeah, that one. Peak Valley Index starts at the bottom. And I'm going to make a note here. Note 0 equals lowest price line. Lowest priced line would be the grammatical English way to say that. So it does start at the bottom, the first peak or valley, and then it increments from there. So great. So that's 41.82 we said in our message log. Let's go ahead over to the message log again. 41.8250. I would say that's pretty close. Yep, 41.8250. Great. Type is equal to 1. Well, let's go back to our enums. What does a type of 1 mean? That means it's a peak, which means that it should be white in color, which this is. So 41.82. I keep losing my message log window. I'm just going to make it longer so it pops down on the other screen. I can grab it. So, well, actually, no, that won't work because now we can't see. Oh, it's the same one. Okay, so type 1. Start is at bar 580. 580. So let's go ahead and find 580. So it started around here, around the 21st of September of 2023 on 580. Although actually this is 579, so it'd be the day after. It'd be on the 22nd of September. So that's that one. And then the end is 0, which means it's either one of the, remember there were 3 different end scenarios where end index of 0 could imply, remember there was these 3 things. It's either the line was not found, which we know is not true. This is not the case because we found a valley type, therefore the line was found. It is not this case. Or the line extends to the very end of the chart. This very well could be true. Or it's not set to extend until future intersection. Either way, end index was set to 0. And then the PV index is 0. Great, this is exactly what we wanted to see. Ziggy, you're not asleep yet, are you? I'm not putting you guys to sleep with this. All we have to do now is put this into a loop and start looping through, and then we'll be able to have all of the profiles, on our message log. One thing I want to do though before I do that is take a moment to think about performance. Right now, this script is running on every single incoming tick. You can see that over here on the right side of the message log. Every incoming tick or chart update interval, it is running through the script and spitting this out. These lines are from a daily chart. They're not really changing that much. They are not changing every millisecond or between millisecond. This is excessive to run through this every time. What can we do to make this a little bit more performance conscious so it doesn't immediately freeze your computer and your screen and Sierra chart and you can't do anything? Well, let's take a look. I think the most effective way for this scenario is to only run this on chart load. And then if you want to re-spit out the values, you can use reload and recalculate from this menu, and then it will recalculate that. So I'm going to create an if block here, and I'm going to say if sc.index equals 0, only run this logic on initial chart load. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of this stuff that I have here, and I'm going to put it in here. And then I'm going to use a quick vim keyboard command to nicely and cleanly indent all of that. So now what you'll see, let me actually show what that looks like. I'm going to recompile this with that small little change. Okay, it succeeded. I'm going to hit refresh here. And then now let's go to the message log. I'm going to clear the message log. Okay, you can see there it is. And now I'm going to come over here. You can see it is no longer running on every tick, but I'm going to hit reload. And there it is, one time. Right? And it's not going every single millisecond. So I'm going to hit reload again, one time. You can hear me hitting the key and it's loading. So there's the performance improvement that we just made, just to make sure that we're not throttling our computer unnecessarily, because again, these values are not changing by the millisecond. This is a daily chart. So, okay, so the last thing that we need to do here, Ziggy, is we need to loop through any other peak valley indices that it may have found on the chart. We don't want to just explicitly look at the first one, the lowest price. We want to look through all of them, right? Our sanity check here, if we found none, we're going to bomb out right here on this return because we found none on the very first try. However, if we did find one, we dumped it, right here we can start our while loop. And what condition do we want to be examining? Well, I think it's this peak valley type. While peak valley type is not equal to peak valley type none. What does this mean in English? While Sierra chart tells us there are more peak valley lines to examine, keep looking, essentially. That's what that's saying. And then when we get to the very last one, it's going to return, or not the very last one, when we go to find the one after the last one. That's what I should say. When we go to find the one after the last one, then it will say, hey, we did not find one there. And then it will bomb out. Okay? And so what we want to do is we actually want to bring this piece of code inside this while loop. And then we also need to do something very important, which is increment our peak valley index counter, if you will. It's kind of a counter. So peak valley index plus plus, and what that's doing is next run through the while loop, look at um, look at the next potential, not guaranteed, um, peak and valley line. But this by itself won't actually place the call. And this won't get populated with anything until we make this call. Where is it? This call here. So what can we do to bring this in here, have it increment this while we're looping through and also checking, and also still respect this situation where we get none? Well, what if we change this a little bit? What if instead of initializing this to 0 and setting it at 0, oh no, we can't. No, we can't. That won't work. We have to start at 0, grab it, see if it exists, bomb out, and then grab it again. So we're going to grab this. After incrementing the peak valley index here, I'm going to call this again. And that's going to update the valley type. So if we get to, like, let's say there's 10 lines on this chart and we got to number 10 and we go to number 11, when it goes to fetch number 11, it won't exist. This will get set to none, and at the bottom of the while loop, this will be set to none. Therefore, it will exit the while loop and finish the function. Otherwise, it'll continue to go through till it finds the last line. So let's go ahead and compile this and see what happens. I feel like there's probably a more efficient way to do this, but we can go back and refactor it. I'm going to do a remote compile here. Get some coffee while I drink this. Uh-oh. Look what we got here. Did not succeed. Let's take a look at what this error is. So this is a really helpful feature of the Sierra Chart remote debugger, remote compiler, I should say, is that it exposes some of the debug information. So we didn't succeed. And I'm just looking at this line number here, 84, line 84, peak valley type none was not declared. Did you mean peak valley type none? Yes, what is the difference? Ah, I added an underscore here where there shouldn't be one. You see that? That's what happened. So I just removed that underscore, and this error, excuse me one second, let me clear my throat. This this error log shows exactly where that offending line number is. Here as well, line 84. Here's line 84 in my code. Boom, it's right there. Very nice and quick. It even gives you a suggestion. Did you mean to do this? Did you have a typo? Yes, I did. Let's recompile this. Succeeded. Okay. Let's go ahead and close this out. Let's go ahead and hit refresh on this, and then let's take a look at our message log. Let me pull this up. Let me clear it actually. Clear log, and then let me hit refresh. Hey, look at that. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it found 9 different lines on this chart. None of them have an end index. They all start around the same time. They're of different types. One is peak, one is valley, one is peak, one is valley. And the highest price one is going to be this, excuse me, it's going to be this last one, 45.65. Let's go ahead and look at where that might be. It looks like it's that one right there. This is a type 1, which is a peak, which should be white. And this appears to be white. And then 45.65 is right there. Yeah, so there's the price for that. And so now we have iterated through all of the different peak and valley lines. We can identify whether it's a peak or a valley. In fact, where are we dumping out peak and valley? Right here. You know, we can do additionally is say if, or rather, how do I do this? Let's create an SC string object and we'll call it peak valley string. Okay. And if peak valley type is equal to peak valley type peak, then set peak valley string to peak. And if peak valley type is equal to valley, then set the string to valley. And then here, type, I'm going to replace this with a string. And then here, instead of valley type, I'm going to replace that with peak valley string.get characters. Is it get cars or get car? I don't remember. It'll yell at me if I'm wrong. So let's just compile that. See if that compiles. And then let's go ahead and hit refresh, and then I lost my message log again. And there you go. You can see this is a peak, that's a valley, that's a peak, that's a valley, that's a peak, that's a valley. I mean, it's the same thing, it's just 1 and 2, but this way, if you needed to look at it. Well, Ziggy, there you go, man. That's how you use that, and I think that will address your thing, your question, your quest. We got some typing here. You're very welcome. I'm gotta grab my kids from school pretty soon here. I got maybe five more minutes. Does anybody have any other very quick questions that we could cover? Or is there any follow-ups on this that anybody has questions about? Oh yeah, I can paste the script. Definitely. Let's grab it here and then let me paste upload file. Oh boy. Let's go to data coding string. Oh no, it's ACS source, not data. ACS. On that same note, I should say people are so protective of their ideas and code and all of this, and I've talked about this before, but I don't really understand that because if you gave me your $1 million trading strategy and code and all of that, and it makes $1 million a day, and you gave it to me, I would lose money on it. I would lose money on it. Why? Because it's not mine. It doesn't fit my personality. It doesn't fit my risk profile. It doesn't. I don't know what it's doing in the even if you explained it to me, it's not mine. It's not. Um, you will find it difficult to have long-term success. Maybe you can have short-term success with this, but it is difficult to have long-term success trying to copy what someone else did that isn't natively yours. So that is part of the reason why I share, my code. I share. You said Ziggy inspirational. That triggered a thought for me on the topic of knowing what to do, knowing what to do here. When we started this, I remember this part. I kept this in here on purpose. Remember this part at the beginning? I was looking at the completely wrong functionality, wrong functions. I went down the wrong rabbit hole the first time. That's okay. I'm human. We all make mistakes. You guys who don't have decades of professional coding experience, you're gonna also make mistakes. This is the process. It's okay to go down the wrong way. Look, we learned about this, you know? Now my memory is so bad I'll forget about this, then I'll have to redo the same thing and look through the docs again later today if I come across it. But there's no shame in looking at the docs and reading through this. There's a there's a this ego and sentiment amongst some of the coding community that I'm using air quotes here, you're an idiot if you don't know how to do this or if you do this one way or another. I think that's just a bunch of hogwash. I don't buy into that. All the all of the best coders that I've known personally and professionally, uh, they they were grinders in the sense that they struggled through it like this. They read the docs, they make mistakes, they try things, they, you know, they 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 go through this process. And I get my eyebrows raised and very skeptical when I come across, unfortunately, way too frequently people who are like, saying, "Well, this is easy," or no, nothing in life, nothing in trading is gonna be easy, or even in coding. Some things can be easier than others, but don't let those people dissuade you from trying and from struggling. It's all about the struggle. Look, we put this together piece by piece. It didn't happen all in one go, and there's probably ways to make this more like, int found was found, something like that, and then checking what this variable if it found it or not. So there's other things to do here. This isn't the end all, but this gets you on the right way. But I guess my point is don't let those don't be one of those or let those folks who behave like that, affect your journey on coding. Everyone starts somewhere and then progresses as you try to learn. So, anyways, I'm rambling here. What else we got? How to make $1 million off this? I don't know. I don't know. But that's my rant on it. Hi, Chris. Welcome. Yes, the process. It's all about the process. Not only in trading and coding, but in life in general. It's all about the process. You can't control the outcome. You can control your process, though. You can control what you do when you run into problems. You can control how you go about. Um, people give Sierra chart documentation so much flack. I think it's actually quite good. Like we went through this piece by piece, and everything was apparent. Sure, I have more experience going through it, but if you invest the time, you will. Got some typing here, and then we'll wrap it up for the day. I can shut this down. I can shut this down. What did I? Oh, I remember one more thing. Don't get dissuaded. You'll see a lot of people saying, "Oh, you gotta just code in Visual Studio with all the latest and greatest IntelliSense type, auto suggest typing, all that." Yes, Visual Studio is great. It has a lot of features and functionality. It's also really nice that Sierra allows you to just use any old text editor. I'm using Vim. You can use Notepad, Notepad++, Sublime Text. You can use whatever you want. And then use the remote compiler. If you're doing pretty basic stuff like this, in the sense that it's not like a full-fledged, automated trading system like I build out for some of my clients. This is a script that is tackling one idea, and a lot of my scripts I won't even I won't even open up Visual Studio. Why? I can just work in Vim. Sure, I don't have the function names being auto-suggested to me with the arguments, but I can look them up in the documentation, and it forces me to like read through stuff and understand how things work. I think that's good. That's part of my process. I think that's how I get better. I don't have it auto suggested to me. Do whatever you guys feel is best for you. That's what you should do. If you want to use Visual Studio, use it. If you want to use Notepad, use it. Do whatever you want to do. Um, I'll experiment how to show those reference values to other studies, such as spreadsheet. Thanks again. You're very welcome. All right, let's end it on that. Again, want to give a big thank you to Alan, who runs the Sierra Charts community server. Dark Noise also helping out with running the server, so big thank you to both of them for having me, letting me come into this server and host these types of streams, and hopefully we can make this a regular thing here. So have a good weekend, everybody, and we'll catch you